Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about the suspension by the Environmental Protection Agency of about 140 employees who have been put on administrative leave because they signed a letter expressing concern about what is happening at the agency. So this is really a kind of a horrifying episode that is a page out of any authoritarian notebook. You give what appear to be very well-founded and earnest and important criticisms, and the government responds by basically bringing down the hammer, making you the villain, and the like. Okay, so there's a public letter expressing concern about all the things the EPA is doing, and it's what's happening kind of everywhere. This is a theme that is playing out without our real knowledge in agency after agency. To the extent we know about them, agency after agency is being completely politicized. People are being pushed aside. The agenda is being completely overhauled to just basically serve Trump's interests and also to just ignore what Congress already has put into place. And so the claims, if they're accurate, and they sure seem to be, they've got, chapter and verse, are really the sort of thing the public needs to know. So there are 5 areas of concern that are laid out in this letter. There's 140 people we know who are being put on administrative leave. The first reports were that was of 170 who had signed the letter. Now different reports make it seem as if many more have signed it. But in any event, we're talking in the hundreds. So there are CCs to Congress. I mean, it's really a whistleblower thing, and they lay out the undermining of public trust. It's supposed to be nonpartisan, served by an agency guided by scientific expertise and an unwavering commitment to the public good. That's been EPA for 5 years. Instead, there's all these politicized press releases and policies that are basically meant to trash previous EPA policies of clean energy and the like, and talking about coal is beautiful, etc., attacks against individual members of Congress. So in other words, not simply change of policy, but completely unreasoned, ad hominem kind of nasty attacks. Second, ignoring scientific consensus to benefit polluters. So, asbestos, mercury, greenhouse gases, the sort of thing that EPA has always made its business. They are completely going the opposite. It's just, Orwellian. Call ignorance is truth and fiction is fact, etc. And they're just replacing health-based regulatory standards for drinking water and chemicals that cause cancer, etc., promoting fossil fuels, etc., reversing progress in America's most vulnerable communities. So we have these, this is a pretty good example of the over-the-top zeal of the administration to get rid of anything that it has the whiff of DEI. So it's a fact that underserved communities that tend to be disproportionately minority have far worse environmental situations and outcomes and health risks. And so that's been a focus of EPA work in the past. Now somehow that to this administration stinks of favoritism for certain races, just completely muddled kind of thinking. So, but they're stopping essentially to focus on the areas that most need the EPA's help, completely gutting research and development, which is the kind of engine of EPA. And then finally, and this really is across the board, promoting a culture of fear, forcing staff to choose between their livelihood and well-being. So the OMB director, really one of the baddest of the bad guys in the Stephen Miller Club, stated he wants EPA employees to be in a constant state of trauma. When they wake up in the morning, we want them to not want to go to work because they are increasingly viewed as the villains. We want their funding to be shut down so that the EPA can't do all the rules against the energy industry. We want to put them in trauma. So this is very much the sort of thing that you want to get a report from inside the agency of what's happening. You want to publicize it. So how does the agency respond? Well, the head of it, Lee Zeldin, says as follows. The letter talks about how the mission is being really undermined. And there are reports from very high-level employees who've always done this. Is the same kind of theme. They've been great, and they're being walked out of the building, and they're not allowed to be there. One more quick quote is, since January 2025, federal workers across the country have been denigrated and dismissed based on false claims of waste, fraud, and abuse. Meanwhile, Americans have witnessed the unraveling of public health and environmental protections in pursuit of political advantage. And that pretty much sums it up in a nutshell. So the sort of faceless Orwellian bureaucracy comes down and suspends all these people. It says you must be available at a phone number provided, but otherwise you may not show up here. They don't seem to have any regard for them as whistleblowers. This is, by the way, a fight that is far from over. The 140 or 170 or 270 have crossed a Rubicon, and they'll probably never be comfortable again in the EPA. But the CCs are out to Congress, et cetera, and you can definitely count on members of the Democratic Party wanting to get to the bottom of it, asking about whistleblower protection and the like. But the EPA, so here's what Zeldin has to say, our zero tolerance policy is in full force and effect and will be unapologetically implemented unconditionally. Let me read that again. It's not very well written. Our zero, in capital letters, tolerance policy is in full force and effect and will be unapologetically implemented unconditionally. So that means that what he calls, this is the head of the EPA today under Trump, a small number of employees using their official work title that was riddled with misinformation regarding agency business. He doesn't try to define what that misinformation is. For that reason, we are putting them on administrative leave. So it's a total, square off and a declaration of war between former employees who are sounding the alarm. And again, the alarm, it's bad with the EPA. It's very bad if they just completely go 180 degrees and they're, both helping all the industries that EPA is there to try to tame and lying about it. But it's also the whole atmosphere of terror, intimidation, and really complete, ingratitude and nastiness to the career folks who have been there at the EPA for years. So it's a kind of double dose of both completely making their work impossible, but making their lives miserable. There you have Project 2025 and the EPA example of what is really happening across all the agencies in government, and that in our very, very best case scenario, the day will come when the republic survives, but trying to clean up these messes that these guys have made and restore agency and government to its general mission of helping the public is going to be heavy lifting work of years or decades. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.